Welcome. My name is Rolly Carencia. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I currently serve as Executive Director of Student Life here at the School of Professional Studies. What a fabulous day for this event. Am I right? So I know rain is coming, so just letting you know, I'm not a forecaster here, but thank you all for joining us today at the third annual SPS Next. Whether you are here in person or online, wherever you are, we appreciate you taking the time to listen to our upcoming SPS student speakers. Before we begin, I would like to take this time to do a land acknowledgement created by our friends at the Columbia University School of Nursing. We acknowledge the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Lenape people on which we learn, work, and gather today at Columbia University. Lenape means real person, or original person, and it is important to remember that Lenape, collectively, are a living and breathing community. Let us honor their legacy. Let us commit ourselves to the struggle against the forces that have dispossessed the Lenape and other indigenous people of their lands. We stand strong in our commitment to support and defend all marginalized people of this land who have been stripped of their rights to self-determination. Tonight, this evening, is where we gather together as a community to share thoughts, perspectives, and ideas of our extraordinary students. SPS Next was born from the notion that SPS is made of students from around the world who are from all different points of their lives and careers. Our students have stories, passions, and ideas to be shared. SPS Next was created to capture some of the many stories from our students and give them a platform to engage with the greater community. Over the past 3 months, many partners at SPS worked tirelessly to bring this event to life. From the review committee who selected these 4 incredible speakers, to the SPS faculty members that provided coaching on their talks, we are grateful for your time and dedication in helping out in this event. I'm so excited for all of you to hear from our speakers as they share their stories and passions. Before I share the mic with our great colleague, Sam, I wanted to give a special shout out to our Senior Associate Dean of Student Affairs, Zalon Crawford, and our Associate Dean of Student, Josh Alexander, who are a big fan of student life events and continue to support these events for our students and our community. Finally, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our lead on our student life team who has really took such care of this event. It's Sam Bashaw, who will share the mic.
Thank you so much, Rolly. Again, I want to welcome everyone to SPS Next. It's an honor to be your host for tonight and to introduce you to our inspiring speakers who have worked so hard these past several months. SPS is lucky to have each of them as students and future alumni. We hope this event will allow our speakers to share their thoughts and ideas openly with you, and that you leave today with food for thought. A couple of notes before we begin. There will be a Q&A portion following the 4 talks, so I ask that you please wait and answer your questions at the end, and ask your questions at the end. There will also be a chance to vote for your favorite speaker. The speaker who wins this audience vote will be rewarded with a special gift at the end. Following the event, we invite you to join us for refreshments and appetizers here at Faculty House. We hope you take this opportunity to connect with our speakers and each other. Without further ado, I present to you our very first speaker. Kristen Dillard is a New York native from Yonkers. She is currently pursuing her master's in sustainability management at Columbia University. After starting the program, her academic journey took an entrepreneurial turn as she launched her natural hair care business, Earth Curl Organics. Through her passionate commitment to raising awareness about sustainable hair care, Kristen aims to empower people of color with knowledge while striving to demystify the intricacies of environmental education, making it more accessible to a broader audience. Kristen's voice for sustainability can also be heard on her podcast, Green Coast, which aims to foster progressive discussions with passionate environmental advocates to inform, inspire, and mobilize action toward a greener, more equitable future. Sounds pretty awesome. In her talk, Kristen will explore the hidden costs of conventional hair care products on our environment, including plastic pollution, chemical runoff harming our waterways, and how mainstream ingredients damage our scalps. Together, let's redefine the standards of natural hair care and create a healthier future. Kristen?
Good evening, everyone. 7 years ago, I faced a personal hair crisis. I was a dedicated swimmer from high school to college, and my lush, coily afro transformed into thin and brittle strands after repeated exposure to chlorine. As a young Black girl unaware of proper natural hair care for swimmers, I embarked on a trial and error journey, experimenting with countless products, from watery moisturizers to thick oil-based hair grease. While I managed to regrow my hair using various products, I discovered a major issue in the natural hair care market: environmental unsustainability and harmful ingredients. Plastic packaging and inorganic ingredients dominated the products, with damaging chemicals like silicones and sulfates that hinder hair health. Each time I would create a healthy hair routine for myself, I found my hair becoming more dependent on the product rather than my own hair regimen. This would cause my hair only to grow or remain healthy if I were using a chemical-filled product, rather than thriving when I would use products with healthy ingredients. Because of this, I knew I had to ditch the chemicals. This realization not only fueled my commitment to educating individuals like you and me to engage in sustainable hair care, but it revealed the lack of sustainable awareness within the natural hair care market, especially with people of color and minorities in America. As the founder of Earth Curl Organics, a sustainable hair care brand, and host of Green Coast, a podcast that inspires conversation about environmental activism, I want to inspire us all to spark a culture of sustainability within our hair care routines. And I'm going to show you how. So let's start by addressing a critical issue: the environmental impact of conventional hair care products. So first, I want to ask you all, do you know where your products go once you wash them out your hair? Feel free to throw out some answers. Okay, the ocean. Sewage system, that's a good. Soil, okay, those are all good. So in the market today, as you all said, so most natural hair products often contribute to chemical runoff and plastic waste, which go into the oceans, which go into the soil, right? So each time we wash our hair, we're washing out dirt and the residue of all the products we have used since our last wash day. Ironically, as our hair becomes cleaner and free from contaminants as we wash, our water supplies become more contaminated and hazardous from the previous products we have used. And I'm going to get just a little sciencey for a bit, but first, where do the chemicals end up? So the chemicals from our products end up in wastewater, surface water, groundwater, and sediment. Though this doesn't necessarily impact drinking water, since there is a treatment process already established, these chemicals are impacting our surrounding waterways, including lakes, rivers, and as someone said before, oceans, meaning that these chemicals are being absorbed by aquatic life and ingested by animals that drink from these waterways. Also, the overuse of plastic packaging intensifies our global plastic pollution crisis. Most of the plastics used for our hair care products are comprised of non-recyclable plastics, causing these containers to remain on Earth eternally with no option to be recycled. And surprisingly, I was a part of the problem. I was purchasing so many plastic bottles that would end up in a landfill where they couldn't be recycled. Little did I know I was engaging in overconsumption, and that is absolutely terrible. Simplifying our product usage not only benefits us individually, but also has positive implications for the planet. And this is why less consumption also means less waste. Currently, companies are switching to more environmentally conscious, sustainable packaging and are starting to care about what their consumers, like us, want. When I walk into my favorite stores like Target and Walmart, I see different companies rebranding their products with a sustainable focus. And it shows that they're trying to minimize their ecological footprint and help conserve natural resources. And this is why it's important for us to understand the material makeup of the containers that we purchase. So, the question is, are they compostable, recyclable, non-plastic, along with understanding every single ingredient that you put in your hair and what it's going to do for you? And this is why innovations in sustainable packaging for natural hair care and products play an important role. So I'm going to go backwards just a bit. According to recent statistics, the market for eco-friendly hair products has seen a significant rise, with a 15% increase in sales over the past year. Though small, we're actually starting to see an even greater interest from consumers in eco-friendly hair products. The rise in interest calls for an opening for more sustainable brands. It's truly amazing to believe that these forward-thinking companies who sell these eco-friendly products prioritize eco-friendly practices, utilizing natural ingredients, ethical sourcing, and minimal packaging. So now, when you look at all of the different hair care products from various brands, make sure that you aim to avoid any products with alcohols and sulfates, which extremely dry out your scalp. Steer clear of synthetic fragrances, which can cause many unknown irritations. And lastly, a major ingredient that is surprisingly in most hair products and shampoos that we should avoid is glycerin, which can actually cause your scalp to be too oily, aiding in greasiness and buildup, preventing healthy growth. But throughout my hair care journey, I've learned that change begins with awareness, and that's why I'm here to empower you all this evening. The choices we make about hair care can have a surprising impact on the environment. But the good news is, with a little knowledge, we can all be a part of the solution. By understanding the environmental footprint of our hair care routine, we can make informed decisions that are good for our hair and the earth. So, I want you to repeat after me. Say, collective action, equals impact. So oftentimes, as we know, and you just said it, collective action equals impact. And sustainable change truly requires a collective effort. Some consumers are even leaving behind mainstream hair care brands and are supporting local small businesses that prioritize organic ingredients and sustainable packaging. 54% of consumers consider sustainability a key factor when buying beauty, hair, and skincare products, with more than half believing it's important to look for products with recyclable packaging. And 44% are concerned about choosing products that are cruelty-free. Consumers want more ingredient transparency for their products and desire for their favorite mainstream brands to ditch the chemicals and plastic containers. These endeavors not only promote sustainable practices, but also support local economies. Beyond focusing on the environmental impact, we must also advocate for policy changes. Regulations on ingredient transparency and environmentally friendly practices can reshape the natural hair care industry. SPS, friends, family, and colleagues, we are all here in this room because we hope to see change happen, and we are here within this space to learn how to change the world. So our journey today has taken us through the connections of environmental impact, sustainable alternatives, consumer empowerment, and collaborative efforts within the natural hair care industry. As we embrace sustainable hair care, we not only enhance our well-being, but we also become stewards of a healthier planet. The power to transform our natural hair care routines lies in our hands. And together, we can redefine the standards of natural hair care and sustainability. So I have one last question for you all. Will you join me on this journey? Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kristen, for that. Now on to our second speaker. Gigi Etienne is a technology and accessibility strategist. Her mission is to make the digital world more accessible to people with disabilities. She strongly believes technology has an enormous potential to empower people with disabilities as long as it is done right. She has experience in building and running accessibility programs at tech companies and as an accessibility engineer and tester. She is currently pursuing a master's in technology management at Columbia University. An enthusiastic public speaker, lucky us, Gigi is dedicated to spreading the word about the importance of accessibility. In her talk, Gigi will discuss building AI technology that is accessible to people with disabilities. How do we do that? What are the key things to take into consideration when building accessible technology? This talk will give you the answer to these questions and empower you to build technology that is accessible to everyone. The title of her talk is, Let's Not Trade Accessibility for Innovation. Please join me in welcoming Gigi.
Thank you, Sam, for that introduction. Hi, everyone. AI is changing the way that we live our lives. It's changing how we get jobs, how efficient we are at work or at school. It's even changing what music we listen to and what movies we watch. AI is also changing the lives of people with disabilities. I'll give you 2 examples. Lucy is a blind person, and she uses the Be My AI app to know things like, what is the expiration date of my milk bottle in the fridge? Or, do I have any eggshells in the eggs that I'm cooking? On the other hand, Franco is seeing the negative impacts of AI innovation. His family just bought a brand new TV with an AI voice recognition remote control. But despite trying to control the TV with his voice several times, he always got the same error message. I do not understand you. Franco lives with Down syndrome and has a speech impediment. He does not speak like the rest of his family, and the TV could not understand him. As we enter the next technology revolution and build technologies with AI, we have to make sure that we are not excluding people with disabilities, that we are not excluding people like Franco. We built the web in the 1990s, and today, in 2024, 16% of the world's population has a disability, and yet 96% of websites are not accessible to people with disabilities. Let's not make the same mistake that we did with the web. Let's not trade accessibility for innovation again. So how do we do this? How do we build accessible AI? What does accessibility even mean in the context of AI? Well, let's imagine you've been tasked with building an AI product at your company. I'll give you 4 key things that you need to take into consideration as you're working on your AI product. 1, you need to train your data model with diverse data. 2, you need to work with people with disabilities in the planning, building, and testing phases of your AI product development cycle. 3, you need to be aware of regulation, or even better, contribute to it. And 4, you need to continue to build accessible interfaces such as apps and websites. So let's talk about the first point, data. Diverse data. Data is the foundation of AI, and AI data is everything. So if you use a data set that contains data that is biased and not accessible to train your AI model will be biased and not accessible. So when collecting the data that you're going to use to train your AI model, it's very important that you make sure that the data is accessible. But what is accessible data? Well, it's both data about people with disabilities and also data that is accessible. What's data about people with disabilities? Let's look at Franco's example again. Why did it happen? Why did the TV not understand him? It happened because the developers of Franco's TV did not train the AI model with data of voices with people with Down syndrome, right? So we have to gather data and build databases about how people with disabilities interact with the world and with technology. And people like you guys who are building AI products have to make sure that we're using those diverse databases to train the models. And Franco is not alone. There are 250 million people in the world who have non-standard speech. So we have to make sure that we're collecting that data. What is now an example of data that is accessible? AI coding assistance. Developers can now use AI to get code suggestions or even sometimes to write code for them. But AI coding assistants are only ever going to write accessible code if they are trained on accessible code. And given that 96% of websites are not accessible for people with disabilities, imagine the possibility of using AI correctly to fix that problem, or even better, to only write accessible code from now on. So now you may be wondering, where do I find these accessible databases? Well, there are a few people developing them. The University of Illinois, backed by Google, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, and Apple, are developing a large database of non-standard speech inputs with people with Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, Parkinson's disease, and other non-standard speech patterns. There are other databases, such as the Orbit database, that contains photographs of people who are photographs of things taken by people who are blind or low vision, or the Access Map that contains accessible entrances for people with reduced mobility. Now, let's talk about the golden rule of accessibility. Always include people with disabilities. You have to work with people with disabilities in the planning, building, and testing phases of your AI product development. If the developers of Franco's TV had done that, they would not have made that mistake in the first place. So how do you do that? Well, two. One, hire people with disabilities into your team. Hire people who are blind, who are deaf, who have cognitive disabilities, people who have a different lived experience, and I guarantee you, your product will be a better one. And two, test with people with disabilities. Test all the way from planning to deployment, and with a diverse group of people with different disabilities. And hey, don't forget to pay your testers for their time. Next, regulation. There is very little regulation around AI right now. In fact, 2 weeks ago, the world's first piece of regulation in the world was passed by the European Parliament, the AI Act. It does mention, luckily, that AI systems should not discriminate against people with disabilities. I do expect more of these regulations to come around in the world pretty soon as well, so stay tuned for that. There are other accessibility-specific regulations, such as the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 in the US, that your product will have to be compliant with as well, so be aware of that as well. But what's very exciting is that as you're working on your AI product, you'll be in a privileged position to understand the potential harms and weaknesses of your product, those that have to be regulated. So you can contribute to regulation and help build regulations to make the world of AI a better and safer place for people with disabilities. Lastly, we have to continue to build accessible interfaces such as apps and websites. Apps and websites, traditional apps and websites, are the way through which the end user is going to interact with your AI technology. So if you build a speech technology with AI, but the app is not accessible, a person with a disability is not going to be able to use your app at all, or your product at all. So this is the last piece of the puzzle, but it's a very important one. and one that has to be compliant with the regulations that we just talked about as well. So as we navigate through the next technology, the next technology innovation with AI, let's look back at the previous one, the invention of the web in the 1990s. The internet has made it possible for people with disabilities to do a lot of things. A person with reduced mobility now doesn't have to go to the bank in person, and they can access their banking services online. Or a person who is blind can now have access to millions of newspapers and books online that they can read. But despite all these opportunities, we failed at making the web an equitable place that everybody can access. We prioritized innovation over inclusion. Let's not make that same mistake again. Let's make sure that AI is designed and built for everybody. I am hopeful. I am hopeful because I am seeing the big tech companies doing this right from the beginning. They are training their AI models on diverse data and making sure that they're not discriminating against people with disabilities. But the work continues with you. Next time that you're working on an AI product or building an AI model, ask yourself these questions. Does our data contain data about people with disabilities? Is our data accessible? Are we working alongside people with disabilities? Are we testing with people with disabilities? Can everybody access our product? This is how innovation should be done. Because progress is not progress unless it's for everyone. Thank you.
Wow, incredible. I got goosebumps at the end. I don't know about anyone else, but thank you so much for that, Gigi. Now for our third speaker. Aditi Singh is from India, but her home is in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where she spent most of her childhood. She came to the United States in 2018 and attended Denison University, where she majored in data analytics with a concentration in physics and narrative journalism. It's quite the combo. Aditi was always fascinated by numbers and the powerful story they can tell. 8 months ago, Aditi moved to the New York office, where she took a business intelligence analyst position within global banking at Goldman Sachs. With her love for numbers, Aditi started the Applied Analytics program part-time last fall. As someone who is very curious and intrigued by the world, she is excited to have the luxury of developing her analytical skills to better explore questions and ideas through this program. Aditi's talk will walk you through her journey of uncovering parts of history her educators wanted forgotten. By using data, narratives, and emotion, she will bring the past back to life. Aditi hopes this will keep those stories alive for generations to come, demonstrating the vital need to design education with integrity. The title of her talk is Data Story: The Truth of British Colonialism. Please join me in welcoming Aditi.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you all for being here today and giving me the opportunity to share my story. I'm really excited. So my story starts in the 8th grade. I was in the 8th grade when I first learned about my own history, 14 years old to be exact, when I first learned the truth about where I come from. Mr. Graham had set a debate in history class. Was the British rule of India justifiable or not? And of course, he placed me in the affirmative, asking me not just to defend the British Raj, but in fact justify it. And I thought nothing of it. I grew up going to a British school in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and interestingly, like many former colonies, Malaysia still has a lot of influence from the British. Like the famous comedian Veer Das recently said, the British are gone, but they never really left. Many children still go to British schools, we speak British English, and like many, aspire to further our education in the UK. And that's the truth for most former British schools and most former British colonies till this day. And how could it not be? Colonizers would go to other people's homes and rule for hundreds of years. They would impose their Western ideals and punish people for practicing their own cultures. It's difficult to uncondition hundreds of years of language imperialism, of colorist beauty standards, and orchestrated power divides within communities. So 8th grade, we had this big debate, and believe it or not, I was a straight A student. And I was on track for being ELC International School's next head prefect. So when given a position in class, I was going to deliver. I went home that night and started preparing for my debate. The sun was setting and the monsoon shower for that evening had just ended. The cool breeze after a thunderous pour is such a special moment. The whispering after the roars, the playfulness after the anger, the purity after the rage. My mother brought over a hot cup of chai and she asked me what I was doing. Needless to say, she didn't take it too well. She was disappointed because the truth is my Cambridge curriculum textbook had a skewed version of history. Pages and pages of romanticized colonialism benefits, bringing English, Christianity, the railroads to the uncivilized East, and barely half a paragraph insinuating that there were moments of injustice. And of course, 14-year-old me believed my textbook because why would school lie to me? Why would my teachers lie to me? Why would the Cambridge history textbook lie to 8th graders? Isn't the point of school to consume knowledge? Like, why wouldn't I believe what I'm taught? And that night, I learned history for the first time. The truth of what British colonialism is. The part where Winston Churchill isn't a glorified war hero, but held accountable for the 3 million people who died in the famine. The part where the British Empire, they weren't known as explorers civilizing the East, but as explorers benefiting from slavery and violence to build their own economy at the cost of others. The part where the history of my family wasn't just joyful and loving, but painful and mortifying. I don't think colonialism has a gray area, but the fact that our education systems romanticize it makes the truth gray. The fact that we easily label countries as third world or developing without acknowledging that their resources were taken away from them during colonial rule makes it gray. The fact that history is written and documented only by the winners makes it gray. As I continue to educate myself and start having conversations with not just my peers, but my teachers and professors, I'm often dismissed being told that, well, you're biased, or you're only relying on anecdotes. And the truth is, yeah, I am Indian. I can't deny that. But you also can't deny that violence is what drove colonialism. That colonialism at the end of the day was brutal domination. Tired of being dismissed and unheard, and to show it's not just emotion driving my arguments, I was inspired to write my senior thesis in college, the computational analysis of the transformation of former colonial countries, which later on went to win the 3rd prize in the undergraduate statistics competition hosted by the American Statistical Association. So yes, I am Indian, and there is emotion, but there's also facts and data to back what I'm saying. So let's walk through the data. Now, I'm not going to get into the weeds of everything right now, but I'm happy to talk about it in the cocktail hour or in the Q&A. But essentially what I did here was I used the colonial transformation data set put together by a group of Harvard historians to talk about how and to what extent were former colonies impacted by colonial rule. Briefly touching on methodology, I used the Pearson correlation matrix to look at the relationship between different variables. I created a ridge regression model, used different algorithms and clustering algorithms specifically, utilized ANOVA and different statistical tests to test my model, and found that there was, in fact, significance in identifying the variables that caused the history to be changed for former colonies. This map shows all the colonies this data set was able to document. The response variable we used here was the colonial transformation score, showing us how much a country has changed during a period of colonial rule. And the significant variables on the left over there can show to what were the conditions and to what extent the former colonies went through their transformation during their colonial rule. We can see economic, political, colonial violence, colonial duration, and border split as significant variables in shaping their history. And to be clear, by economic, I mean resource depletion. By political, I mean abuse of power. By violence, I mean slavery. By duration, I mean forced entry. And by border split, I mean division of communities. Again, I'm not trying to get into the weeds of the data, but I wanted to share this piece of research to show there is, in fact, data and analytics showcasing colonialism wasn't a romantic experience. These countries till this day are paying the price of their exploited resources. There's a reason why many former colonies that used to be rich are poor today, and why former colonizers who used to be poor are rich today. It's because they took them through an act of domination. I'm not demanding reparations. I'm not demanding monetary fines. I'm not even demanding an apology. All I'm asking is we keep our history alive. My journalism professor in college told me, write about the things you are obsessed with, the things you cannot let go of. And for some reason, I can't let this go. I don't know if it's because I'm still angry that I was lied to through the sanctity of my own education, or if it's because I can't stand it when people label my motherland as developing on third world when it's really being reborn after being stripped to nothing. Or if it's because I can't stand the fact that my great-grandfather fought till his death for the freedom of our nation, just to be forgotten in our history textbooks. He was imprisoned for rebellion and then killed with glass pieces mixed into his bread for his last meal, a cruel death. And then I can't stand the reality that they're instead romanticized photos in our 8th grade textbooks instead of the brutality of the death he experienced. There are almost 10,000 Cambridge schools in over 160 countries, with children learning with the curriculum I grew up with. Chances are, if I didn't have an Indian mother or an Indian family who brought me chai that evening and talked to me, I might have believed what I was told and argued the affirmative and got in my A and kept believing in my education. But as we've seen today, especially with history, it's not that black and white. So forgive me for bringing emotion to history, but when only the winners get to write their only versions of history, that's all the more reason we have to keep our stories alive. Thank you very much.
Amazing. All right, so again, thank you so much, Aditi, for sharing your story. The time has come for our last, but certainly not least speaker. Tom Farndon is the Director of Client Experience at Impact for Good, a company that specializes in connecting corporations to community initiatives via innovative team building programs. He is currently in the nonprofit management program at Columbia University and will be graduating this spring. After over 16 years in event facilitation, Tom has come to appreciate the thrill of travel and the importance of community engagement in cities across the globe. When he's on the ground in New York City, Tom enjoys cooking, mixing cocktails, and taking the time to walk the city streets. During his talk, Tom will explore innovative ways to spur employee engagement so that companies can create a platform of pattern of sustained impact, benefiting both workers and nonprofits around the world. This presentation will serve as a call to action to reckon with your own ability to make meaningful contributions to your communities and equip you with new ways of how to do so. The title of his talk is Corporate Social Responsibility, How It Must Evolve. Please join me in welcoming Tom.
Thank you very much, Sam. And then let me get to my portion of things here. Okay. So, everyone, thank you for being here. And let's get ourselves started. So the first thing that I'd like to do is get you logged into a bit of an audience response system so that I can get some answers as we go. So everybody, please get your phones out, because you can scan a QR code that's going to appear right up on that screen, and you can just scan that, just put your name in there. Don't worry, I'm not tracking any data. Just give me your name so we can talk with one another. Because the first question that I have for all of you is going to be, how many people here remember what doing a random act of kindness was? You can show of hands, you can do it on the phones. But yeah, it was something that was really nice. It's over 40 years old now, actually. And what it was that it was an inspiration for you to do something kind for somebody else. And we can even see on the screen just how many people are answering this one right here. And we can put it up right there. So yes, pretty much everybody. That's good. I got a lot of people who like to do good and do nice things, which I like. So with that, you'll notice that they not only spur you to good action, but they give you structure. They give you an opportunity to say, hey, I can incorporate this into my daily life. I can incorporate this into myself as a human being, doing something good for others. Now, a question for all of you, this is like, what way do we do good for other people? And I have a poll to ask and find out what exactly you can do. So look at your phones once again and answer this one for me. So how have you given back to your community? Have you volunteered at a soup kitchen? Have you done pro bono work, maybe as part of your skill set? Donated financially, participated in social activism, a combination of the above, or maybe none of the above just yet. Now, I ask you because there are so many different ways for you to express yourself in doing something good for your community. And I can see with all the people answering, we've got all sorts of ways to give back. And that's another thing that I love to see. But how many of you now have done that as part of maybe a corporate event? So I'm going to once again ask you to take a look at your phones and answer this for me. How many of you done this during a work event? Yes or no? I've given back, I have not given back. Still, a lot of people have still done something through their place of work. A place where they can say, hey, we want to give you the opportunity, the platform to do something good and to give back. So it's good to see that at least a majority of you have done all that together. Now, it's good to have this experience of kindness, but this also talks about structure. Now, that random act of kindness might seem random, but it was by design to inspire people to give back. And corporations also do this in a certain way, although probably a little more obviously. Internal days of giving, mentorships for local and after-school programs, grants for education programs, paid volunteer hours, matching donations, just a few of the ways that businesses have inspired and outlined how they can contribute to communities as a whole. In a sense, it's a benefit akin to your healthcare, your vision, your dental. Your company covers your ability to get some teeth cleanings and to get your eyes checked. But for corporate social responsibility, or CSR, it's a benefit that gets you emotionally and physically invested in your communities and beyond, which reverberates within yourself. Now, how many people here feel good or feel a sense of fulfillment whenever they have volunteered? I'm going to ask you that once more right here. Yes, or maybe something else. And it's okay, because we all have different lived experiences. And it's good to see, again, such positive reinforcement. It does feel good, but one of the cool things about it feeling good is that it also has measured health benefits. In fact, we'll take a look right here. The definition of all of these health benefits are only happening when you meet a certain threshold. You start to feel good, you start to have those health benefits of whether or not you have lower instances of depression, you have better mobility later in life because you've been moving around and volunteering. But with this, that only hits when you get to a certain place. When you volunteer with 2 or more organizations, with 100 hours or more total volunteers, or at least 40 hours of volunteering each year. Now, this threshold is what you need to meet in order to get those benefits. And sometimes, from a corporation standpoint, this may seem a little daunting. From an individual standpoint, it's maybe volunteering at a soup kitchen, maybe once a weekend for a couple hours every week of the year. But for corporations of several hundred people or more, suddenly that's tens of thousands of volunteer hours that you provide to all of your employees. But how do we hit that threshold together? How do we hit it and make a difference for our workers and for our communities in total? But in order to get a better picture of the kind of giving that we give in the United States, I'd like to draw your attention to this. 64% of all giving, of almost $500 billion in 2022, came from individuals. And second was foundations, $105 billion, about 21%. Third were bequests at 9% or $45 billion. And last were corporations at 6%. Now you would wonder, the idea of corporate social responsibility, should this be a concern? I think it's not. The thing is, though, for years I've seen the statistics, and for years I've struggled with it. For almost a decade, I've done corporate social responsibility team building programs, and I've struggled with the idea, is this enough? Is what I do scratching the surface of the need? Is it actually being meaningful? Is it being seen as something more nefarious, something maybe greenwashed? Maybe I'm just putting up a front just to make people believe that I'm doing something good, and it was something that tore at me, that it was performative. But a few years ago, I did realize that that was a very narrow-minded view of it. It was shortly after an event. A client had built some STEM education materials they had donated to a local New York City nonprofit. And then we had the nonprofit representative. They came on site. They thanked us. We had a moment where we felt that we did some good. It was a group of young interns. It was during the summer. It was a very nice time. And then later on, I got a call from that same beneficiary that said, thank you so much for arranging for those young people to come and teach the kids about the materials they donated. And I said, I had nothing to do with that. I have no idea what you're talking about. And she said, who was it? I called our client. They had nothing to do with it either. It turns out that these people took initiative. They did it themselves. They were the ones that said, you know what? I was inspired by this. I'm going to go out and I'm going to help these kids. And that's when I realized that 6% is not that bad, because it's that 6% that inspires that 64%. It gives them a platform, an opportunity to see how they can make that difference, to see what change they can enact in the world. And that was a first step because it was a CSR event. Now, through my time here at Columbia's School of Professional Studies, I've encountered the concept of CSV, otherwise known as creating shared value. I learned about it in my innovations class with Richard Feiner, and it was something that has changed my viewing of what CSR is. Now, the term was first kind of talked about. It was back in 2011, Harvard Business Review. It was by Mark Kramer and Mike Porter. And they tell you this, and I will share this on the screen so you can all see what this quote is. Now, shared value is not about personal values, nor is it about sharing the value already created by firms. It's a redistribution approach. So what I took this to mean was that it's not just the corporation in the giving or in the nonprofits in the receiving. It's what they combine together and the value they create to give to those around them, to the workers and the people who benefit from those services. Another concept was collective impact. Another great one that the same people had kind of talked about before. This time it was Mark Kramer with Mark Fitzer, and another op-ed a few years later from the ecosystem of shared value. And for this one, collective impact does not mean that all participants have to do the same things. All people can come together in different ways to enact change. You don't always need to be aligned in the exact same way to make a difference. You can all be collectively impacting the community just by wanting to and going your own pathway to get there. So CSV and collective impact can and should now be the guidepost for what CSR can do. Because if we look deeper down, the next evolutionary step, instead of looking at the big corporations merging together and creating initiatives that create societal change, instead, what you need to do is get down to the individual and what spurs them on. We come across that natural evolution. We hone our focus from the company at large to the individual experience. I've been blessed by working with so many people to see that they infuse their very soul into the good that they want to do. They search for connections at every level. They want to convey that being a good corporate citizen is just in their culture. It's what they do. It's a necessary part of being their employee there. It's no longer just an in-kind donation. It's the value that we create as a potential to leverage our work to a cause we care deeply about. It's cybersecurity companies creating STEAM labs across America and India. It's going to be educational websites providing their materials for free so people can learn to teach. It's big tech forming accurate database of disabilities and being able to make a more equitable atmosphere. It's hundreds of other companies doing just that same thing. And yes, there will always be accounts of greenwashing. There will always be an idea of insincerity when a big corporation does something good. But it's only a bad thing if we let it keep us from giving. We let it keep us from doing the right thing and doing well. We should never be afraid of the label we receive because of it. We should be afraid of not making that difference in the first place. Because after all, a better bottom line for our workers means that they are more financially comfortable to be more emotionally available for the people in their communities. So they need to invest. They need to invest in the employee's ability to give back. The idea of professional development, teaching people how to speak, teaching people how to use Excel. We need to be charitable development. We need to teach them how to vet nonprofits. We need to teach them how to get out there and make differences for people. We need to teach them that they are not isolated. Just because their company hasn't done something yet doesn't mean that they can't. So let's not gatekeep this idea of how to be a good corporate citizen. Let's teach everybody this, because as a seed in the wind, every time they move and take root, they make a wonderful difference wherever they go. So I want to end with something for all of you here. Because after any corporate social responsibility event, so long as you get that one person who can start, who is inspired, you're going to be making a difference. So the quote I'll leave you with is this final one here. Not all profit is equal. Profits involving a social purpose represent a higher form of capitalism. So if you can do something that is socially good and beneficial for all, that is something we need to do all together. And I'll leave you with one final story to kind of cement this. And the story goes back, it was an event. We were giving back bikes. And there was giving back bikes to those who were unhoused. And I had an attendee who was in themselves at one point unhoused. And they gave not only the bike, but a written note that said, I have been where you are, and I'm waiting for you to join me where I am now. And that connection, that's what it was. It wasn't just the bike. It wasn't just the thing with the two spokes and the wheels and the gears, and I'm probably messing up whatever is in a bike, but it's fine. But what it was it was that connection, it was that reassurance that they were able to connect and know that someone was with them the whole way. So the last question on your phones, everyone, is this. Are you ready to change the world with me today? So let's take a look and see what that answer could possibly be. Yes or yes button yellow? Everyone, thank you for your time.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Tom. I know, shake out those nerves, shake them all out. Can we just give another round for our amazing speakers? So impressed with each one of you. I feel like I learned a lot. Hopefully you all have taken at least something away here, but we're not done yet. So now it's time to allow you, our lovely audience, to interact with the speakers. As mentioned at the beginning of tonight's event, there will be an audience vote. Let me go. There we go. Please scan this QR code for the chance to vote for the speaker that you thought was your favorite, but also met the following criteria: engaging content, organization skills, overall presentation style. I do want to note also about the QR code is that if you're not logged into your Google account, it might prompt you to log in. And I know we've had some issues if you're not a Columbia member here, or a student or a staff, you might also have difficulty logging in. And I apologize ahead of the time. So awesome. So following our Q&A, which will start shortly, we will announce a speaker who won this audience vote and reward them with a special prize. But however, you all did fabulous. So I'd like to invite all of our speakers back up on stage so we can start with the Q&A.
Hello. Well, first also, you've been a great job as a host as well. Make sure you give her some love. Yes, I appreciated you. And I have a question for Tom. So Tom, what inspired you to even make this kind of talk for everyone here today?
That's a great question. The inspiration was that I've slowly seen what corporate philanthropy has grown over the years of being part of it, and I desperately want to be part of the next step and to tell as many people as I can that they can make a difference. It's been such an honor to see how people light up when they see things that they've done well, things that they've impacted, and I thought this was just the perfect forum to be able to tell more people about all the good that they can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Now run around.
Thank you. Hey, hi everybody. My name is Joanna Smith. Amazing job, everyone. I have a question for Tom and for Kristen. I know. Okay, so as a founder, I'm a founder with them, nonprofit organization. I wanted to know how would you approach speaking to corporate first in terms of developing that relationship in order to work with them and then other individuals?
How to identify with corporate and how to kind of get them to support nonprofits?
Yes.
Is that what? Okay, great. So with that, all corporations have pillars and values and things that they feel are really akin to what their culture is. And the first thing is to find out exactly what makes them tick in that culture and to find the way that they can apply that to you. Because there are always different ways and different models of how you can get something to support you, even if it's not the exact same thing. Even if it's, let's say, a cybersecurity or a tech company, and let's say you do food insecurity. But the thing is, though, the way you can connect it, people only think well on a full stomach. So if you can feed these people, then they can work their minds and be the next generation of coders, the next generation of tech entrepreneurs. And it's the way that you create that narrative and seamlessly integrate it into what your mission is and their values are. That's the best way that I have seen for people to kind of start that conversation and to maintain it.
Give it up for Tom. Ooh, that was great. Thank you. So we'll be talking a little bit more after as well. So Kristen, I just wanted to congratulations on your hair care line and also your podcast. Yeah. So I just wanted to know for your hair care line, is there a specific thing that you are working on, whether it's like breakage of hair or the dermatology for skin, alopecia? Is there something specific that you're working on for those who are working on getting their natural hair to the next level?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Joanna. Thank you very much. My products really focus on, it's both skin and it works for the hair as well. So what I really want to focus on is nourishment. So yes, with the products that I use, hair growth might happen because there's organic Jamaican black castor oil within it, organic mango butter, but the focus is really that you're thriving with what you have personally. And it's not like you're reaching out, like let's say in mainstream, within the mainstream market, when people are looking to grow their hair, there are chemicals in there stimulating those processes to happen. Instead, what I really want to focus on is, okay, is your scalp healthy? And even working through the patches, it's like, oh my goodness, I see just a little bit of growth, but it's nourishing what you have and growing and working with who you are in your personal environment.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and great job to all of you. My question is for Gigi. I am a parent of a disabled child, and I also work in technology. And I've also noticed that, you know, as you've spoken about adults, what do you think companies, especially like television companies, can do to possibly include children as well as they're developing? You know, because I think there may always be a thought about the adults, but I just now realized like there are a lot of focus groups that actually don't include some of our kids who are developing, you know, who are trying to learn in those spaces, be it like learning apps or so on and so forth. So I'd love your take on that.
Thank you, thank you. Wow, yeah, that's a good question. Actually, thank you. I hadn't thought of that before. And I will guess that most people at companies also haven't thought about that or doing testing with kids with disabilities. Like, I don't think that's something that it's definitely something I've not heard as I work with in the space of accessibility. But I agree, I think that would be really interesting, and agree. Like, for example, what you were saying about movies or TV companies, etc. I think it's a space that we haven't looked into, or at least not many people. It's not very well known. I haven't heard of it, even within the space of accessibility. But I agree that we should do it. We should do focus groups with kids and understand, you know, what are their needs. There's different needs from adults with disabilities. So what are those needs? And not just in TVs, but perhaps in, you know, assistive technologies. Like, I don't know what the research is for assistive technologies for kids in particular. So I think that it's definitely a space that needs to have a lot more research in. So yes, thank you. So much. Thank you.
Hi, great job, everyone. My question is for Aditi. As someone who has challenges with learning about my history as well in my education, how do you confidently represent your history in spaces where you're being dismissed as emotional? Especially as someone working in Goldman Sachs, I mean, I bet you have a lot of tough conversations. So what are some tips that you have when you want to confidently approach some not so digestible topics, but also in a respectful, confident, and reaffirming way so we don't lose the history and the stories?
It's a great question. I think for me, I think the way like I've always approached it, especially, you know, whether it's like a tough conversation, I think at work, or even with colonialism, when it's like being like just having conversations with like British history teachers, for example, because I went to like a British school. Like, I think narratives are really powerful because they do drive emotion, and that's, I think, what people connect with. But I think when I start getting dismissed is where I really look at the data. Like, that's what inspired my entire senior thesis. It was because of like 20 years of frustration of being dismissed. And then when I did this research, I was like, I don't want it just sitting on my desk. Like, I want to share it. I want people to know that there is data, and it's not just this, like, even though storytelling is one of the most powerful forms of communication and just like passing history down, like, I think data is really, really powerful with that. And even at work, like, I think any difficult conversation I've had, if you provide metrics, if you provide data, I think it's very hard for people to dismiss you because you're like armed up.
You have the receipts.
Thank you all for your impressive topics and presentations. Also very different and a lot of diversity on all your backgrounds and topics. My question is for Aditi and Gigi. And I would say disabilities, people with disabilities is a kind of minority but it is like a hidden minority, an invisible minority, you know, and somehow we don't speak so much about them. On the other hand, colonialism has been part of the history as a fact of many continents, but at the same time we don't speak so much about that topic, which caused, of course, a lot of grief, suffering, and impact. So my question would be, why do we hide from these topics? Why do we fear to speak loud and clear about these topics? And of course, what could we learn from that action? Thank you.
You start.
I think when it comes to like colonialism, this is my take. I think it's by design. Like, I think a lot of history is designed to be forgotten because the people who are designing these curriculums in a British school, their intent is to keep their history glamorized and keep their history as this powerful empire. They wouldn't, or maybe based on the way they've designed it, it doesn't seem like they want to take ownership of what's happened, right? And so I think it's a choice that's been made, and I think holding them accountable and bringing in the data and doing the research and being like, well, you know, this curriculum actually doesn't make sense, and making changes on a policy level when it comes to curriculum design is what needs to be done. Why it's not being done is because I think the people making those decisions and people designing those curriculums, there's not a lot of diversity up there. And so I think the first step is getting the right people on those panels and the ones designing those curriculums and making those decisions. Thank you.
Well, with regards to disability, I'd say we have, whether it's by design or not, but we've built a world where it's very difficult to have a disability. And that's not, the problem is not having the disability, it's that the world is not built for you if you have a disability. And so if the world is built for me because I'm not in a wheelchair, why would it not be built for someone who has a wheelchair as well? So I think there's the design part of the world that has to change, and I think a lot of it, I mean, I'm talking about specifically digital accessibility, but that applies to everything. And you pointed out invisible disabilities as well. Those are actually the majority of disabilities, and they're not seen. So many people in this audience could have a disability and no one would know. So we have to be aware of that as well. So I would say that just if we think about the way that we've designed the world, that is, it's a scary place for someone with a disability. It's scary because of how we've designed it, but it is scary for that reason. And so I think something of why people, like one of the reasons, and this is my opinion, I'm happy to be proven wrong, but is that people don't talk about it, it's not very well known because I think people are scared of disabilities. And so, you know, you could be disabled tomorrow. Like, you could have an accident and be disabled tomorrow, right? And so that's a big part of, I think, why there's a fear of talking about accessibility. And I think that fear feeds into the lack of conversation around accessibility amongst ourselves and amongst corporations in this particular case.
Awesome. So I think we have time for one more question, and I saw Yulia's hand first, so.
I just want to say that it was extremely difficult for me to vote today because as a student of nonprofit management program and a good friend of Tom, of course, my vote was for him, but as a Ukrainian, I really wanted to vote for Aditi, and why? It's because I really feel your pain as Ukrainian, and you know, we were never a colony, but in some way, like during Soviet Union, it was very similar, and the way Russia, you know, suppressed their resistance. The way we were like our culture was destroyed for many decades, and there was a great Russian, you know, political influence all the time in the country. I really feel your pain, and I really, support you in, any way. Thank you so much.
Great. I think maybe any other last minute questions that might be short? And then you're like, it's too long. That's what the networking hour is for. Awesome. All right. All right, let's give it up again for our speakers. Yes. You can, stay up here. Stay up here. You are in the spotlight for the whole night. Awesome. So, yes, we would now like to celebrate each of our speakers for being selected tonight and all their hard work bringing these talks to life. Thank you for being incredible speakers and inspiring SPS students, and we have a gift for you from the Office of Student Life. So thank you. Getting home on the train might be difficult, but sorry. Yes, thank you. Awesome. And so now the time has come to announce our audience vote. So the winner is Gigi. But again, yes, Gigi. But again, you all did fabulous. Thank you so much for all of your talks. Before we close tonight, the Office of Student Life would like to extend some thank yous to those who made SPS Next possible. We would first like to thank the review committee. Some of you are here tonight. So Melissa Barnes, Jia Cow, Nicole Haber, Eduardo Santander, Angela Simmons, and Emily Taylor for their hard work in reviewing the many applicants and selecting these fabulous candidates. So yes. We would like to thank the coaches, Carolyn Montrose, lecturer in the Strategic Communication Program, and Michelle Trezino, Associate Director of Administration for the Construction Administration Program, whose expertise helped our speakers fine-tune their talks and presentations prior to tonight. So thank you. We also want to thank our student life interns and graduate assistants, so Eduardo, John V, for their hard work today and every day to support our events. I cannot do my job without you, so thank you so much. Lastly, we would like to extend a thank you to our partners here in Faculty House and University Events Management for making tonight possible. You make the space feel welcoming and festive for all of us here. And you're going to feed us and hydrate us very soon, so thank you. So with that being said, we would like to invite the speakers for group photo, so don't go anywhere. And the cocktail networking hour can begin. Thank you, everyone.